Previously, on the Fan of History, there was a major civil war in Assyria, and Shamshi-Adad V won the civil war, but he did it with the help of Babylonia, and he had to agree to pretty bad terms for Assyria to win the war. So, this is part 2 of the events of the 810s BC. I'm just a fan of history, not an historian. So please tell me if something is wrong and I'll try to learn more. So Shamshi-Adad V is the king of the Neo-Assyrian Empire. And Assyria is the strongest state in the Near East. He's recovering from the civil war. He's the 5th king of the empire. The empire started in 911 BC. And the vassal states, of which there are many, especially in the west, in Syria, are now trying to get out. Marduk-balassu-ipqi is the king of Babylon. He is probably quite old and his kingdom is weakening. And he's the brother of Queen Semiramis, the wife of Shamshi-Adad V of Assyria. North of Assyria, in Urartu, Ishpuini is reforming stuff, doing great things. And Urartu is getting stronger. And to the north of Urartu, there is a situation with the Cimmerian horse lords that could at any point break through the Caucasus and the mini kingdoms of the northern Caucasus that Urartu is trying to conquer. So, let's talk about Shamshi-Adad. He has a son called Adad-nirari. He probably has more sons, but he has this very important wife, Shammuramat or Semiramis. And she might have been a Babylonian. She might have been the daughter of Marduk-zakir-Shumi. But she left an enormous impression on the world. Remember that the Assyrians will be forgotten. For a long, long time, all we had in Western history was the Old Testament. So Romans and Greek historians made up some stuff about Assyria. And they especially hooked on to Shammuramat and the name Semiramis. So this will be a lot of stuff of legend. And you have to wonder, what was Shammuramat like? This strong woman who is the queen of Assyria, because these are the legends she inspired. And they're a very good example then about why the Greek historians are pretty bad, unless they talk about Greece or wars that Greece was involved in. I normally try to avoid legends, but this is so far out. So I have to point out once again that this is legendary material. And there are some ancient sources that are just out there. And when people didn't know things about Babylon and Assyria before the great discovery and decipherment of cuneiform in the 19th century, they just said that everything was built by Semiramis. So hold on to something. We'll talk about what the legend says that this queen actually did. So she married King Ninus of Assyria, who is probably not Shamshi-Adad V. She was the mother of Ninjas, the king of Assyria, who is probably not Adad-nirari III. When her son died, she pretended to be him and then took over Assyria for 42 years. And those 42 years are dated to 2114 to 2072 BC. She invaded Armenia because they had a really hunky king who looked great. The handsome Arad the Beautiful, and she just wanted to have him. And then she had him and accidentally killed him and tried to resurrect him, and there's like really crazy stories. She founded Urartu, of course, and she built Tushpa and the mountain fortresses around Van. And there might actually be confusion there because Shalmaneser's name is sort of like Semiramis. So things that Shalmaneser III did in Urartu are attributed to Queen Semiramis. She also invented the chastity belt. She invented castration. She was actually goddess. Maybe she was even the mother goddess. And maybe she's the mother of God. She was the daughter of the fish goddess Dergetu, who was a fish. She is in the second circle of hell in the Divine Comedy by Dante in medieval times. And she appears in a lot of work of fiction, because if you need a mysterious Eastern queen, just call her Semiramis. And Semiramis, or Shammuramat, is still a popular name for female children in Assyria to this day. But I'm not done. There is more. She tried to invade India with fake elephants. She founded Babylon. She conquered Egypt. And she was actually queen of the world. But she eventually failed to take India. So, what about this historical person? What about Shammuramat, who was possibly a Babylonian princess, but most definitely the queen of Shamshi-Adad V? There is a very, very common confusion that she ruled Assyria after Shamshi-Adad died. But the consent now among Assyrian historians is that she did not. But she was very influential. She's mentioned on stelae. She has a tomb in Ashur among the Assyrian kings. And my main source, Cambridge Ancient History, mentions that she must have been a woman with presence, an aura, and an almost superhuman quality. And she must have done quite an impression on history. But I have very few deeds that can actually be attributed to her. And she was then the wife of Shamshi-Adad and the mother of Adad-Nirari III, the next king of Assyria. In 814 BC, Shamshi-Adad invades Babylonia. And this is probably because of revenge reasons. But he can't forget the harsh terms that the last king of Babylon imposed on him. And now, remember, ancient treaties are always between rulers and not between nations. So Babylon and Assyria needs to negotiate again, but there is no new treaty because the new Babylonian king does not agree to the new Assyrian terms. And the main thing you can say about Shamshi-Adad V and why Assyria is declining at this time is probably because Shamshi-Adad was very vengeful, and he wants revenge. He invades Babylon in the east, in the foothills of the Zagros mountains. He captured several minor cities, but an alliance forms to fight Shamshi-Adad V. You remember the Chaldeans and the Kassites? They are barbarian tribes who have left the Babylonian kingdom. The Chaldeans are in the marches to the south, but the Kassites are right here, right in the middle of the Assyrian invasion. So they decide to fight alongside the king of Babylon. The Chaldeans also come out of the marches to fight. The Arameans, who have settled down and are now controlled by Babylon, they join in this fight. And even Elam comes out of the woodwork. We talked about Elam in the 980s BC show, but I don't think you remember, so I have to give you a brief about this ancient, powerful kingdom to the southeast of Babylon. This is the mysterious kingdom of Elam, centered around the city of Susa, which is the capital. It's almost as old as Egypt, and there are recent archaeological finds that says that the great question of which one is the oldest civilization in the world, and it might very well be Elam. But this is like the hottest thing, the hottest question you can discuss with ancient historians, because it is very unclear which one is the oldest civilization, depending partly on how you define a civilization. But the Elamites, they talk a unique language. It has no connection to any other language that we know. Very little is known about this period in Elam. Elam was matriarchal at some points, ruled by women. But from this point onwards, Elam will take a stance against Assyrian expansion for unknown reasons. I'm not sure why, but maybe they feared if Babylon falls, we are next. So Elam joins up with Babylon, And this also probably includes the kingdom of Ipqi, which is right north of Elam and populated by people related to the Elamites. But the important city of Anshan, that you can see on the map to the south, it is threatened by the mountain tribes of the Zagros. So Elam has its own problems as well. But they've chosen to come out of the woodwork and fight the Assyrians. So there is a great battle, the Battle of Papsukkai, Assyria versus this alliance. And Shamshi-Adad V, who is a notorious liar even among Assyrian kings, who always make grand statements about their own greatness, he claims a glorious victory. But there is nothing that indicates that Shamshi-Adad actually won this battle, because there is no territory gained, and Marduk-balassu-ipqi remains the king of Babylonia. But next year Shamshi-Adad comes again. It is his religious duty to his god Ashur to go to war every year. And for some reason Marduk-balassu-ipqi does not get the alliance going again. So he's besieged in the city of Dur, he's captured and he's deported to Assyria. And Babylonia is left in a vacuum. There is the alliance, but who is going to be the king of Babylon? Would you have wanted this job? Because Shamshi-Adad is going to come back. Because he hates Babylon at this point. But Baba-aha-iddina, his name means Bao has given me a brother. He becomes the king of Babylon. And this is a traditional name of a second son who is never supposed to have power. And like clockwork, Shamshi-Adad invades yet again in 812 BC. He ignores the unruly vassals in the west. He ignores the growing power of Urartu to the north and the Manians to the northeast. He invades Babylon and he despoils Deir, Lakiru and Ganati. He takes the new king, capture him and deport him to Assyria. And as I said before, we never really know what happens to the kings who are deported to Assyria. But this time Shamshi-Adad takes the patron deities, the gods of Deir, Lakiru and Ganati, and steal their temples, their statues, and a Babylonian god is worshipped where his statue is. So he makes new temples for these gods and kidnap them to Assyria. And Babylon can't say anything about it. And then Shamshi-Adad spares Babylon. He goes to the city of Kutha, Babylon, and the great city of truth and justice, Borsippa. There he makes sacrifices and treat people nicely, just like his father did when he invaded Babylon. But Babylon is at this point utterly defeated. The Chaldeans and the Kassites, they are like, hey, we are done, we are not getting involved, and they retreat to their own kingdoms and prepare to defend themselves against the Assyrians. The Arameans and Elam also disappears back into the woodwork. And in 811 BC, Shamshi-Adad V is back and he utterly smashes Babylonia. And the Chaldeans have to pay tribute to keep him out of the southern marches, the traditional Chaldean homeland. And Shamshi-Adad V claims for himself the title King of Sumer and Akkad. And this is the ancient title of Sargon the Great. And that means that Shamshi-Adad V now rules all of Mesopotamia, including Babylon. But he will not have the time to stay too much in Babylon, and Babylon will decline into a state of anarchy due to the savage beatings by this vengeful Assyrian king. Right after this great fight, Shamshi-Adad V dies. And he might have had plans for order in Babylon. He might have had plans for integrating Babylon into Assyria. But he dies, and his wife then, Queen Semiramis, do not rule Assyria after his death. The Assyrian decline is continuing, and we'll talk more about that in the next episode. This vendetta of Shamshi-Adad V against Babylon has done a lot of damage. Powerful Assyrian nobles have taken control of, formerly under the rule of the king, but they are now practically independent and defending the borders, particularly in the west. We need a strong king now to save Assyria. This is also the year that the empire has been around for 100 years. It's been 100 years since the empire started expanding. But 100 years is not an important sum of years to the Assyrians, because the Assyrians are probably using the base number 60, if I'm not mistaken, just like the old Sumerians. Shamshi-Adad V is buried at the old capital Ashur, as all the kings were. And I want to mention that at Ashur there is the one temple to Ashur, the god of war, the one true god of the Assyrians, and it's called the Ashara. So big important temple in Ashur. In 811 BC then, upon the death of his father, Adad-Nirari III becomes the king of Assyria. He is the 6th king of the empire. He is the grandson of Shalmaneser III. He is a very, very hard king to judge, because he has great qualities, and at the best of times he's like Shalmaneser III or Ashurnasirpal II, and he will put in work to stop the outside dangers. So he will succeed somewhat in preserving the borders of Assyria, but he is not very successful when it comes to preventing the empire from rotting from inside. I actually just read that he wasn't quite young when he became the king, and his youth is the main reason why people think that Semiramis, there's also an inscription, but it has been misinterpreted. This is the main reason why people think that Queen Semiramis ruled Assyria. But Adad-nirari III will rule Assyria for 28 years. There is a lot of Babylonian influence, and I think Adad-nirari wants to be the king of Babylon as well. And he has a claim then. He is the grandson of the great king. Oh, I can't remember the long king names. He's the grandfather of the king that just died in Babylon. There is an important Babylonian cult of Nabu, the scribe of the gods in Assyria. But this cult has been around ever since the days of Ashurnasirpal II. So this is also a reason why people think that Queen Semiramis ruled Assyria, because this cult grows powerful in Assyria. But it does not have a lot to do with her. So what about the West? What about all the territories that Ashurnasirpal II and Shalmaneser III added to the empire's vassal states? Well, if you look at Tel Barsip in the middle of the map here, it's Shalmaneser III renamed it to Kar Shalmaneser, and it's the great Assyrian fortress in the west. This is from where the Assyrians control the west, and this fortress stands. But the Euphrates is the border of the real Assyrian domination. I don't know if the kingdoms defected or not, if the Neo-Hittite and Aramean states of the Levant, if they paid tribute or didn't pay tribute, but they have not seen a royal Assyrian army since 827 BC. And the two most powerful states are Damascus and Israel. So when the Assyrian hand is not heavy on them, what do? Well, do you remember what Damascus and Israel like to do? Well, they like to fight each other. So there are no Assyrians. It's on! Let's fight! Hazael is the king of Aram Damascus. Jehu is the king of Israel. Hazael will be around in our story for quite some time. But at some point during this decade, Jehu dies and his son Jehoahaz becomes the king of Israel. This is Jehoahaz. He will rule Israel from 814 to 798 BC according to the chronology of Thiel. The chronologies of ancient Israel are confusing and contested. There is an archaeological find confirming the existence of Jehoahaz, son of the king. He is initially faithful to Yahweh, but monotheism is not really around in Israel. So Israel is a polytheist society, and it will take until the Babylonian exile for the Hebrews to really become monotheists. So Jehoahaz pays a lot of attention to a cult pole of Asherah, who stands in Samaria, the capital of Israel. And Asherah is the mother goddess of the ancient Semitic pantheon. She shows up in the ancient city of Ugarit, which was destroyed by the Sea Peoples. She's even in Egypt. And Asherah is very important in Israel, and some scholars actually believe that she is worshipped as the wife of Yahweh. And if you read the Old Testament, there is a lot of references to polytheism, and that Yahweh is actually the Lord of the gods, that he controls other gods and tells them what to do. So Old Testament always filled with interesting stuff. You find household shrines to Asherah until the 6th century all over Israel. In 810 BC, Adad-Nirari III feels the need to invade Babylonia. Maybe this is just a sense of tradition, because this is the 5th year in a row when the Assyrian king invades Babylonia. The Chaldeans, they are fed up with this. They sit in their march, they pay their tribute. They're like, oh, get away from us, evil Assyrians. And Adad-Nirari apparently encounters some resistance because he captures a lot of Babylonian troops and some more gods. But he makes the sacrifices to the major gods, and then suddenly he returns deported civilians that Shamshi-Adad V probably took from Babylon, and then he provides rations for them. So he's actually supporting Babylonia, people of Babylon, to keep going. And it is likely that Adad-Nirari III actually was the king of Babylon at this time, because there is no other king. And the Assyrian records are getting worse, so we don't know a lot about what actually happened here in Babylon. So, in Mexico, the Olmecs are doing stuff. Our random fact for the week about the Olmecs is that we talked a lot about the things they got from trades. And the things they traded, they were like really good traders, because they got jade and gold and great things, and they traded back jaguar pelts and feathers, because they were so powerful and influential that it was like really cool to walk around in a jaguar pelt with a feather if you didn't live in the jungle. So the Olmecs still doing great, still focused around the great religious center of La Venta. The Maya still around in Yucatan, looking at the Olmecs, thinking that the Olmecs are great. In India, we don't have any sources. We know that Panchal is the great kingdom, and it's incredibly hard to date anything. But I've actually found something I can talk about in the events of 809 to 800 BC. So next time I will talk about something that actually happened in India at this time, approximately. In Peru, the Chavin are turning themselves into jaguars and eating hallucinogenic cacti. They are also excellent metal workers, and they do great work with gold. And their culture is centered around Chavindu Huantar. It seems to be entirely peaceful. They don't even make weapons. In Europe, the Villanovans are still around in Italy. They're getting closer to becoming the Etruscans. Chalci and Lefkandi, or Eritrea, depending on if you believe that Lefkandi is old Eritrea, are strong cities on the island of Euboea, and they are the most powerful Greek cities of this time. The Greek colony of Almina, founded by the Euboean cities, is around in Syria, importing Eastern influences to Greece. Other important early village states at this time are Sparta, Knossos, Athens, Miletus, and Argos, and soon Corinth. Soon I will not be able to use this picture, because this picture is taken from my world map for 1000 BC, and very soon, around 800 BC, I have to change it. Something happens in Greece, and it is very likely that the date is 810 BC. Cambridge Ancient History has a good argument for why this is happening around 810 BC. It's the Eunomia. And there was a great disorder in Laconia. Laconia is the area of this map. There was a great disorder for a long time after the Dorian invasion. It's been 300 years of disorder, but the disorder ends, and this is called the Eunomia. This is the time of the reforms of Lycurgus, the mythical lawgiver of Sparta, and this is the time of the foundation of Sparta. It is extremely difficult to know what is legend and what is history at this early time. Remember, we are still in the dark age of Greece. So I will do a special video called The Legends of Sparta to cover the early history, the foundation myth, etc. of Sparta. And I will enter Sparta into the main narrative with the First Messenian War. And I'm right now trying to understand when the First Messenian War happens, because there are a lot of different dates for this war. In 810 BC, Ishpuini of Urartu dies, and his son Menoa was already the king alongside his father. So this is no great change, but Menoa is now the one and only king of Urartu. And he is quite special because he has made all these monuments to himself. So we know from Urartian sources that he was the king, but the Assyrians blatantly refused to mention him. So he is not mentioned in the Assyrian sources for some reason. Next time we are going to go to Sparta. Is it madness? No, it's Sparta! We will go to Laconia and we will meet the greatest warriors of all time. I will dispel a lot of myths about Sparta. This will probably be a two-parter where I will talk about the legends first and then about Spartan society, because the Spartans actually seem to be the greatest warriors of all time. And this is a very special culture, and it forges incredibly efficient warriors. Much more efficient man to man than the Assyrians. Please discuss the show with me on YouTube or on Facebook. I do this Decade Reports weekly. Check it out on Twitter. Please go to my website. And subscribe to this YouTube channel, like this YouTube channel, share the videos on this YouTube channel. Because I'm doing this for fun, but I really like feedback and attention, because I'm an attention whore, sorry about that. So please help me out if you like this, and if you don't like it, tell me why you don't like it. And maybe I can improve something. Thank you for watching.